Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is. I hope it's good to be where you are because it's certainly good to be here. My name is Baltimore Fats, and this is the continuation of Baltimore. Yeah. All right, so before we can get to the Jubilee, and I know I've been talking about the Jubilee, and eventually it's going to happen, but the story keeps drawing me further. You can't have a Jubilee celebrating the rebuilding of your city without your city first being destroyed, right? So we have the Great Fire of Baltimore. About February 7th and 8th. And of course, I did do a video about the Baltimore fire. After a big fire like this, you look to your city leaders, and who was mayor of Baltimore was this gentleman here, and his name was Robert McLean, and he was uh, the youngest mayor ever elected to Baltimore City. I don't know if that holds true today, but in 1903 it was true, and he won a hotly contested election. He beat out an incumbent Democrat mayor in the Democratic primary and won the election by like less than 600 votes. And the loser, the Republican loser, petitioned, and there was all kinds of brouhaha. And I read all kinds of articles about that in the Sun. But I want to try to make this kind of as fast and move the story along without doing all that kind of reading. But I will do some reading. So it was, he wasn't the popular choice, and he made some interesting choices cabinet wise. And I am going to be doing deeper research on this. I mean, I'm just coming across this stuff now, but I still want to have a fun, unscripted show. But I really am looking into this stuff, and there's depths to this story that are just, I haven't even begun yet. He does sneak in on the Democratic ticket, but he's got pedigree, and I want to demonstrate his pedigree a little bit. His uncle was the governor of Maryland. Now this guy is amazing, and this is what I talk about when I mean this is what I mean when I say pedigree, right? Look at this guy's career is unbelievable, right? He was ambassador to Mexico, France, and China. He's a member of the House of Representatives. He was on the Democratic National Committee. He was the 39th governor of Maryland. He was from Delaware, but he was educated in France at College Bourbon, and he became acquainted with the Marquis de Lafayette. I mean, that's unbelievable. Are you kidding me? Of course, because we know that Lafayette has ties with the Carrolls here in Baltimore, and this McLean family is very connected all the way back. They actually made their money because this Louis McLean here serves under Washington, and he gets made first. He gets made like first customs officer or whatever, and so he makes all his money on seized merchandise. Right? He sends his kid off to college in France, and he becomes. And his father was then in 1833. His father was appointed Secretary of the Treasury, and McLean, his uncle, the mayor of Baltimore City during the fire, his uncle was appointed cadet by Andrew Jackson. And I didn't realize that. I guess the president has that power. He just like inserts whoever he wants into West Point, right? Because he's president. um, and then this is even more fascinating. In 1838, he was transferred to the Corps of Topographical Engineers under General Zachary Taylor, who, of course, becomes president. Right before this, when was he president? Um, he served barely a year and a half. But okay, 1849. So but the Corps of Topographical Engineers. What is that? Of course, it's the Army Corps of Engineers. You know, um, and they say he goes to the Northern Lakes, which of course I joked about in the one video, and because there seems to be some maps that don't list the Great Lakes in them, and that maybe they were, manufactured, and this kind of lends itself to that a little bit. But he had this phenomenal political career, unbelievable. And he was envoy to the Orient, the China and Korea, Japan, Siam, uh, just unbelievable. So our boy definitely comes from stock, right? But he's young, and he seems to be a puppet. There's this anti-McLean article from 1903 that is very critical of him and his handlers. And this is amazing what it says here, right? And this gives you a little sense of what the contest was like. Democratic citizens, businessmen, and taxpayers, stop for a moment to read these few facts. The future of Baltimore depends upon the defeat of Bernard Carter's scheme to elect Robert M. McLean mayor of Baltimore, and through him to control the executive department and board of estimates of this city. This is far and away beyond any fight that I, Freeman Razin, has ever had to do with. And this is so it's these two gentlemen, this I, Freeman Razin, and who I didn't really get to look up yet, because again, I want to keep things open. Yeah, I want avenues to explore for later. But because it was Bernard Carter's scheme, I needed to find out more about who Bernard Carter was. And here he is. This is his obituary. 1912. He died of a heart attack on vacation. I don't quite remember, 60 something years of age. Um, Connected, unbelievable on both sides of his family. The founding the founding family of Virginia, the Carters, and the founding Maryland family, the Calverts. On his mother's side from the Calverts and on his father's side from the Carters. This guy is deeply connected to the earliest colonial times in America, right? And he even names his son George Calvert Jr. And he's a lawyer, and he was he was the leader of the Maryland Bar Association for 30 some years. Top dog Maryland Bar Association lawyer, right? And he was backing McLean, and McLean also had backing from the youth movement. And it's funny because let's see if I can, because the youth movement hail him as our young Napoleon, and I only just recently found out that the Bonapartes, the heirs of Napoleon, emigrated to Baltimore. I had no idea. So there'll be episodes of some show about that coming up down the line. So he did get some support, and our boy takes office on May 31st, 2000, 1903, and so he has several months in office, and then this 24 blocks burned in heart of Baltimore. City's most valuable buildings in ruins. Loss variously estimated from $50 million to $80 million. Blaze still spreading eastward and southward at 3:30 a.m. So they're going to press about 3:30 a.m. to get a morning edition. Now this is not being printed in Baltimore. This is being printed in Washington D.C. Right? And we're going to talk about some of the articles that are on this front page. But this is what he has to deal with. So just several months into his career, the devastation is unbelievable. I mean, this is what it's left with. So I want to talk a little bit about the fire, and I want to read from this article a little bit. I think it's interesting that it comes from a blog spot called Owlcation, which, owls, no coincidence there. And we have Dolores Monet here, and she writes a really good article about the Baltimore fire, and I hope to remember to link it. And there's some great pictures, but there's just a couple quick points that I want to pull out of here. Again, here's the size of the devastation: 140 acres, 1,500 buildings, 2,500 businesses. But this is interesting here. Before the fire, they required homeowners to keep ladders tall enough to reach their rooftops. Right? And then there was fire departments organized by 1763. Now you have to think about this. Maryland has been colonized since the 1630s, so you're talking 130 some years later. They're getting around to fire departments. Hand watered pumps by 1769. But this is what is interesting here, because this is going to come up in a bit. The construction of attached wooden buildings in congested areas of the city was outlawed in 1799. I want you to keep that in mind. She talks about, she talks about the fire and the devastation. She's got some good pictures in here. Like, this is a great picture, and I want to just make note of these, telephone poles here, these electricity poles. I mean, look at these things, right? And there's so many pictures of after the fire where these poles are still standing, you know. And it's also the coldest day of the year. All this water allegedly freezes all over these buildings, but and this guy's just like whistling Dixie over here. Look at him staring at the cameraman. Um, that's the corner where the Hearst building blew up. That's where it started. So, a very interesting article, but I wanted to point that out because it's going to be relevant in a minute about that 1799. Um, so the mayor now is a young mayor, the youngest mayor ever. He's got this fire on his hand, and so there's all this destruction. And one thing that I wanted to point out about it was that this is a detail of that page one. The day the fire was burning at 3:30 a.m. They say it was still spreading. They said publish the paper being actually printed in D.C. to be shipped to Baltimore and beyond. So Baltimore Sun never missed an issue using these DC presses that they had. Right? And so I want you to consider this. The fire starts at 10:30 Sunday morning. This edition goes to bed some point around 3:30 in the morning on Monday. So less than 24 hours. And it says a detailed estimate of the loss in the wholesale district. And I just want to point out some of these. On Hopkins Place, the Hearst building, where it started, $1.5 million with over $1 million in insurance. A vacant building, $50,000. Right? Another dry goods company at 1.5 million with more than $1 million in insurance. And to see the number of dry good companies is unbelievable. Surgical instruments up here, 60,000. I would think surgical instruments would, I don't know, more valuable. Clothing, $250,000. Just huge sums of money in the paper, estimating the worth of these businesses within 24 hours of the fire going up. If that's not freaking fishy, the list is extensive, and on the headline itself, it says 50 to 80 million dollars, and that's a lot of money. That's a lot of damage. That's a lot of insurance loans and bank loans and things like that going out. And who's going to benefit from all of that are people like the architect's father, Douglas H. Thomas Sr. And I'm going to be, as I keep digging through this story, as it gets deeper and deeper, I'm going to go to I made a call. I called the Maryland Historical Society today. I set myself up for next week. I'm going to go in there. See what that yields me. But I have seen estimates from this time that say this is about $100 million. And so we all know that fires have been big business throughout history. This is no secret. I'm just going to scroll through here. It's interesting that the first one listed is Jerusalem, I think. But every major area, at least in the West, and some otherwise, Moscow here, but there's some Asian fires as well, and big fires everywhere, and then we start getting into like the more modern times, the post-plague and Renaissance eras, right? And they happen with more frequency through the 19th century. Look at the number of fires in the 19th century. It just doesn't end, man. This list is endless. The number of fires they were doing right after whatever the time would be of the event, if people are saying the event is in the late 1700s, man, they started having an awful lot of fires in the 1800s. Every year 1830s not so much, but look at the 1840s, The 1850s is a bunch. 1860s is a bunch. It's crazy. Through the 1900s, and there's a bunch in the 1900s all the way. Oh, here's our years. In '04, look at they have these three big ones in '04. 850 buildings in Ailsund. That's a lot. Um, and then what I wanted to point out that in the 40s, of course, World War II, they bombing the crap out of everything because this is where they're really hiding the history. They've got it all figured out. They got the instruments in place. We're all brainwashed zombie idiots. We're never going to figure it all out. So they can stop bombing shit and start building new stuff. They can stop with the fires and start building new stuff, right? They've now created a new paradigm for us. And in the 50s we get a significant drop off. 3 fires. This is just according to Wiki, of course, just having fun with Wiki. The 60s is 4, the 70s 2. Then we start to pick up again in the 80s, and the 90s is 3, and then the 2000s a bit more, and now in the 2010s there's quite a few. So it's on upswing a little bit. But there was 20-year, 30-year period where it was really, really slow after World War II. So fires are business. They wipe out all these towns, and it creates industry for everybody. And I wanted to show this. All right, 1904 fire loss, $230 million. This includes Baltimore, which I say upper estimates are 100, but conservative, 60 or so. They talk about 1904 being the worst year since 1871, although 1900 was really bad. But they include Toronto and a bunch of fires that happened in North America to come to this total of $230 million. And so what I want to do is, I didn't set it up. What I wanted to do is show this, right? So a dollar in 1904 is $28, all right, 28.21. So if you put in a conservative, I'm actually not conservative, but a middle of the road estimate, 75 million. It's just over $2 billion, equivalent today, right? So think about that on a scale of 230 million for all of North America, and you're coming in at $6.5 billion. So it's a huge, huge scam, a business, whatever, business, those who control us, they burn these things down and rebuild them back up because that's what they do. So of course, not only is all that fire good for the money, it's also good for hiding truth, for hiding the past, and they get to profit on it, right? Because look at this picture. Mary was kind enough to send me this picture. This is from 1903 or 4, before the fire, downtown Baltimore area. And this picture is amazing. Look at this doorway up here. But what really fascinates me about this picture is I believe this is brick here and here. I see wood here. All right, we have a bay door dug out in the basement here, so an afterthought entranceway into the basement. Because if they were going to design a basement to get things in and out of, they would do it in a better way than this. you know. Um, so what this makes me believe is that at one time there was a surface layer that probably ran up close to this height, and that they built this door and these wood frameworks on top of this building. Um, after the event. And then when the technology came through Baltimore to dig all it out and do the work that needed to be done, this is kind of what was left. And I want you to remember that blog post said that in 1799 they made this kind of thing illegal. So this house is, well over 100 years old on top of this. And so if my speculation holds out that any of this portion here was under a layer of mud, then this top port would have to be older than 1799, or they would not have been able to build it. And I love that there's like a little door, and without this transom window on top, this could have been a really tall door. Big door, little door. But really, and so this is the type of evidence that can be hidden and destroyed in these massive fires. So when they rewrite the history, they don't have to mention this kind of stuff, and I hope that people, aren't curious, or they put this stuff in here for people like us. I don't know why this stuff is in here, but it raises all kinds of questions, that's for sure. But really, it does come back down more than anything to the financials of it. When you have this kind of money, and in 1904, $75 million being almost $2 billion today, your city, you're going to set up a commission and a councils, and there's going to be review boards and all that other stuff. And who are they? And we have the Burnt District Commission. And of course, the Burnt District Commission is going to be looking for help, right, for His Honor the Mayor, right? This is, and you have to remember that I hope to get into deeper aspects of this story down the line. I'm trying to be as quick as I can. So this is the commission. I wanted to find out who would be on this commission. And so this talks about this is on August 12th. And I'm not going to get into it. I just want to get to the people's name, because this is all I'm going to do more. I'm just trying to make a streamlined episode to move the story forward so I can get to some Jubilee action before the summertime, and I have to take a nice long break. So we have E. Clay Timanis, C.K. Lord, Jonathan T. Graham, Jonathan W. Snyder. I'm assuming that's Jonathan. Jason H. Smith, James R. Brewer Jr. Brewer. So we have a Smith and a Brewer and a Lord and a Timanis that are on the Burnt District Commission. Okay? And so they're going to be looking for the mayor to play ball with them, because they're going to be getting all kinds of offers, and they're working all kinds of angles, and the money coming in through the insurance companies and bank loans, which the Thomas family, and I'm going to be getting deeper into them because, like I said, the story just keeps, it just keeps pulling me deeper and deeper. Because it always comes down to banking and money, and they're all connected to the colonial families who never lost ties with the crown. And then all of that kind of just disappears, like after World War I. But and what happens if you don't cooperate? What happens if you're not a good mayor? That's helpful to the commission. You get suicided. Mayor McLean's career ends with pistol shot, found on the floor of his room, a bullet through the head, and dies in less than 2 hours. And here's the capper. E. Clay Timanis, now Chief Magistrate. And there he is. That's E. Clay Timanis. And we're going to move ahead with the story of the Reconstruction of Baltimore and down into the Jubilee. And so until the next one, guys, cheers.